Iran position, which is focusing strictly on its nuclear program. It insists on its right to enrich uranium, making its missile program and regional policies a part of the negotiation, while the U.S. position remains to extend the dialogue beyond nuclear issues to include Iran's ballistic missiles, support for armed proxies, and human rights record demands Tehran has so far refused. I want to begin in the studio with John Dalton. We know that this escalation is not new. We have the USS Abraham Lincoln moving in from the Pacific, and the entirety of the Middle East seem to be heightened. It is a heightened time, especially coming after last month's abduction of Nicolas Maduro. So the US has constantly strained foreign relations or foreign policy when it comes to other nations. It has abducted Nicolas Maduro, head of state of a nation of Venezuela, and now it has a reciprocal relationship of one type of harassment towards the regime inside Iran regarding protests, regarding the 3-week-long protests that we've seen recently. The number of deaths of the protesters still remain very unclear, of many of the media houses reporting 30,000, while some reported only 2,000 to 3,000 deaths that has happened. So I want to understand, what is the future given that regional characters such as Oman has now stepped in?
Yeah. Well, the United States, leaving aside Maduro for the moment, that's, I think, a different issue altogether. But you have to wonder whether or not these kind of events that are triggered by purely events which are inside the boundary of a country are being used to deflect attention away from bad news in the United States or scandals in the United States. So we'll talk about that later, maybe. Iran has always said that they have the right to enrich uranium for non-nuclear purposes, for non-nuclear bomb purposes, let's say. And the United States has retaliated. There was a deal on the table 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that Donald Trump killed, that was the JTPOA, that would have allowed some selective enrichment of uranium, but an end to the nuclear program in Iran. Trump withdrew from that agreement, even though the European Union was solidly behind it. So I think that the aggressive behavior of Donald Trump in these areas, which are really outside of his normal control, deeply displays an affinity for businesses, business interests, national partners that he is associated with. For example, he would not care about Iran if Iran was not the enemy of Israel. So the enemy of my friend is my enemy, is what Donald Trump is doing in Iran. Sure, we'd all like to see stability in Iran. I'm sure that every country in the Middle East would like to see Iran sort of be under control in some respect and be a worthy partner. Very intelligent, highly educated population. They're a theocracy, of course, and are difficult to deal with. But I think that we have to look at all of these kind of aggressive behaviors through a different lens. This is not a typical protecting the Western Hemisphere Monroe Doctrine kind of an issue. This is an aggressive assault against a country with which the United States has always had a difficult relationship, but with which Israel has an existential relationship. And I think that I see this totally as a way of projecting American power on behalf of Israel to convince the Ayatollah and others in Iran to not just to abandon their nuclear program, but to stop threatening Israel.
Regarding the art of the deal from Donald Trump, as well as living in a modern world regarding technology, and that is the exact same topic that I will pick out in the studio with John Dalton. We know that the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has announced a new step to regulate social media platforms and strengthen protections for minors, stating digital spaces have enabled criminal activity, disinformation, and harmful content. To some extent, even I understand that screen time should be limited for minors and children, because I am a father of two as well. I want to focus on this issue with John Dalton in the studio. It is not just Spain that has recently implemented this kind of scenario. It's the same with Australia and Germany to some extent. I want to understand what is the importance of this kind of decision making from the very top of a nation to understand its juniors, its future. So what is your comment?
Well, I think that all these social media platforms, the argument against them, what they're doing is that they are ruining the future generation, that they are so affecting the youth and brainwashing them in some respects and getting them involved in social media topics by design. That's the main point that we're looking at here. That it has come to be whistleblowers inside Facebook have said, for example, that Facebook intentionally designs addiction of young people in their software itself. That it's all designed with algorithms and to make young people watch more and more and more and more. And this, for example, anybody who has used any one of these platforms, whether it's WhatsApp or Instagram or Snapchat and so forth, understand that this repetition of these reels over and over again, these short, brief movies, basically creates this sort of addiction of young people looking at these over and over and over again. In addition, there's some scandalous behavior by some, like X now has a media product, a software product, social media product called Grok. And a young woman in Australia, which was the beginning of this Australian problem, a young woman in Australia who was a regular user of X and other things, boys in her school were able to undress her via the media itself. The Grok allows you to undress a character. And she became so embarrassed and so upset about this that she took her own life. So that was the beginning of the Australian effort to say, look, under 16, you're not allowed to use it at all. Other countries have said, well, you can use it under certain circumstances, but only at certain times. But, I mean, this is, as I've mentioned on this show several times, Instagram is a cesspool. That it is absolutely should be restricted for young people in Bangladesh. It should only be available for anybody else who wants to use it after school hours, maybe only from 8 to midnight or from 8 to 10. The most excessive use of TikTok in Great Britain is from midnight to 3 a.m. So it's a pervasive, destabilizing mental health situation that if countries do not take action to address this, the future population of these young people will be deeply scarred.
Of course.
I mean, how could a policeman exercise his duty effectively when he has participated in the process of undermining the truth, of making victims? I mean, how can somebody in the military be disciplined and obey command? How can a guy respect his wife when he's had posted images of some girl or looked at some images of some girl? It's a destructive, very, very socially destructive medium. And I think it has to be addressed, and I'm happy to see Australia do it, Germany's doing it, Spain is doing it. The United States, of course, is a wholly owned subsidiary of the tech giants, and so nothing will happen there, probably. But I would like to see some restrictions by this new government that comes in put on the use of social media in Bangladesh. Whether whoever gets elected, it's not a religious issue, it's a social development issue that can affect the future.